Hey yo, what is going on you guys? Alejandro here and welcome back to another episode of Magayon. In this episode, we're going to be building the Royal Palace Museum, home of the royal family and this gorgeous grand palace at the base of the hill. But as you can see, it's located by the river, perpendicular to the river. It's a linear park. It takes inspiration from various plazas or parks similar to this one, mainly from France, just like the Louvre, because this is a museum after all, and the Louvre has history to it, which I'm going to be talking later on. I also took inspiration from the Palace of Versailles, a lot of French inspiration for the architecture in this series. But I'm not only going to be taking inspiration from the French, I'm going to be taking inspiration from various different places like Thailand, Japan, America, Rome, all the different types of architecture. And this is the Royal Palace Museum, an amalgamation of various different types of architecture to form something uniquely Magayon. This is basically me playing with the various assets that are at my disposal to make something that might, serve its purpose as a Royal Palace Museum. Now, I'm saying Royal Palace Museum because this is divided into two parts. The one in the base is the museum, and the one on top of the hill is the home of the royal family. Now, later on in the video, I will be explaining the lore even more because the series has a lore. If you haven't been following, is Philippines never colonized, and in this reality, there's a royal family. Now, they used to have absolute power. It was an absolute monarchy, but now it's a democratic monarchy or something similar to the United Kingdom. Basically, they used to own this entire place, used to be their palace, but they decided to open it to the public, this green space that they had at the front, and turn it into a museum, which I'm going to be building in part 1, which is this one. Part 2 will be the palace. That's going to be next episode, going to be next week, I guess, but for now we're going to be building the museum. And if you guys want to check out how I built this, keep on watching. So I'm starting off by placing this fountain here. I'm using procedural objects to customize its shape. It's a fountain from the campus DLC, I guess. It's one of the campuses because I can't use them unless I make a campus district. And I like the shape of this because a lot of fountains are of this design, and the one in the Tokyo Imperial Hotel had the similar shape, so I wanted to implement that. Actually, later on in the video, in my first attempt, I tried to mimic the hotel. I was like, what if I just copy the Imperial Hotel here? But I decided that the view of the palace is no longer visible from the bridge, so you're going to be seeing jumps in the edit later on where I have an Imperial Hotel at the ground, and then later on I don't have it anymore. And I'm using this for the main building. I'm using the Thai college building, Chulalongkorn University Theater, I guess. And there's only a few assets out there in the workshop that can serve this purpose, and thankfully we have this one right here, which is gorgeous. And I just copied and pasted them to form this long corridor, hallway, wing type of thing on the side. And I'm also using a mix of these law school modular buildings. These are actually parks, but the name is the law school. And I'm mixing them together to form a unique type of architecture. I'm elevating it so that the top part would have this repetitive line on top, as you can see. It's continuous windows at the top part, and at the bottom there is like an elevated balcony or something. And here I'm using another Thai building. I think it's a temple or a prayer temple, and I'm using its roof to clean up the roof here at one of the entrances to the side entrances, where there's no central entrance because plaza is in the middle. But here is a quick cut. This is the auditorium from the campus DLC, from the literary university or something. I'm not sure. And I PO'd it so that I can use it because there are tons of assets from the campus DLC which are amazing. And I just used the temple roof again to clean it up. And yeah, I am just flipping things up, placing things together, merging them together to form something unique. And that's an amazing tip if you guys want to make something unique in City Skylines. Just clip the buildings together and check if it works. Most of the time you're gonna have to do trial and error, as I have been doing. And here at the top we have the Royal Palace, and I'm adding in this. I PO'd another building because I wasn't satisfied. There was a tower on top, so I placed it down. And this is like the central part of the palace, or it's like a square in the center of the main palace and its wings. And this is where the royal family enters, because half of it, that side on the left, will be open to the public, but this place will be private completely. And we're going to be having tons of statues in this build, but most of them are like horses or something because they were the only things in the workshop. But I also wanted to make something more unique, but I don't want to put a specific statue of a person because I don't want any attachments to this place, because I want to make it its own thing. And now we are doing the decals. Now I'm using these decals which are light colored because I want to give this a sense of regality, and I want to make it feel like marble, because marble is one of the textures, or one of the things that you use to make it feel gorgeous. And also because it's light, it reflects more light, decreases heat. And speaking of heat, we're going to be placing trees here. Now the landscaping here is quite basic, but it took me quite a lot of attempts just to figure out how to design this. But I decided to just stick with the basic grid layout, more squarish, nothing too fancy. And I'm using these curb props, yes, and I'm shaping how the pathways are going to work by using these ones. I was just figuring out how this all works, but basically I was thinking that this place used to be just quite barren or quite open. There was no landscaping here that much. There was landscaping, but after they decided to turn this into a museum, they decided to level up their game on the landscaping, and this is what we have now. We have tons of green patches here. Now imagine this used to just be plain pavement with small patches of green, but since it's the 2030s, we have to be very mindful of how we build this place. And I'm choosing later on, while we're landscaping, I'll be explaining the choice of trees for this place. But yeah, getting back to the thing, I'm placing also pathways in it so that people will actually walk through it or to it, because we want to see people go through it, because I have put a lot of detail, I have put a lot of time and attention to this thing. People should probably walk through this place, and it's quite an amazing place to be in. It's one of the best squares in the city, even though it's a rectangle. But yeah, just cleaning things up, aligning things, and now it's starting to really take shape. Once I place down the fountain, look at that. Isn't that just gorgeous? It's just took shape. We also have two fountains on the side. I added in a fountain also to cool down the place, because 2030s, we're in the tropics, it's quite hot, so we gotta have way of handling the heat, because you can't handle the heat. I bring the heat. Just kidding. Anyways, yeah, I'm changing in the roads, the pathways, and I'm ever so slightly nudging it to form at an angle following the fountain. Speaking of fountain, I'm detailing the fountain here. As you can see, I'm using fountain jets, making a custom fountain and sinking it down to give it a little bit more variety. Later on, you'd see what I mean by the path that I was talking about. But for now, I'm just cleaning things up. I just want the place to be, later on in the live play, you'd see what I'm talking about on how everything that I placed here is planned. Because right now, it's quite messy. I'm just placing things down, and I'm rambling on how I'm building this. But I elevated that pathway. If you're familiar with this concrete pedestrian asset, I've been using this for quite a while now, and they have to be elevated so that they would not have clipping issues or something. And I just, filled it all in with this decal, and everything looks gorgeous. But since I've elevated it, there's a little bit of thing going on with shadows, so I just added in a concrete surface on top of it so that it would all look smooth and gorgeous. And now we're just finishing off the planters that I'm placing. I've had a lot of issues with these planters, and thankfully by the end of it, it all worked out great in the end. I just said end twice, right? Okay, now we're doing the road and the trees later on. I decided to change it into a 6-lane road, the vanilla one, because the size of it was kind of perfect. And this avenue right here is where royal parades would be held, and there would be a lot of events here. But the military parade will still be held at the boulevard, which is much longer because this one just stretched for a few kilometers, like only a kilometer. The scale of the city is weird, so it's shorter basically than the boulevard. But now I'm doing the detailing. Now, don't do what I do. If you guys want to save up time, build first the big things and then go to the small things, because I started landscaping with the small things, and then later on from afar you just won't be able to see it, and now it's quite laggy. But I'm not regretting it. For the cinematics, it's gorgeous. The amount of detail here is just right. I mean, I could have gone more, but I guess that's right. But since this is like a very important place, the amount of detail that I place here, I think is justified. But later on in the live play, I will be showing you guys how gorgeous it really is. But yeah, I'm also placing in bigger trees, and I'm choosing trees that have a lot of detail in it, especially for the bigger ones, because the more detail there is in something, the bigger it feels. Trickery, like in the sci-fi movies. If you have juxtaposition of a very detailed thing with a super detailed to a no detailed thing, just having a comparison between something that is super detailed at the far, even though it's small, it feels big. You know what I mean? Basically, yeah, we're just playing with perspective and with the eyes and with the angles to really sell this place as a grand place, even though it's quite small. Yes, most of the city is small. It's kind of like Disneyland, but yeah. I'm now just doing this intersection here, doing lines, connections, and this is a very bikeable city. We have a one-way ring road around the entire place. If you guys want to bike around this palace museum thing, you can do that, and you can do biking around the city, and biking here would be quite fun. It's kind of like almost rivaling Copenhagen or the Netherlands. I don't know, but yeah, we still don't have that. Like, we're still not that level. We're great, but we're not that great. We have a lot of trade-offs in this series because I want to keep it grounded. And now I'm just adding in some trees, more trees, and it's already taking shape. I mean, it took shape. It already has one of the most gorgeous verandas. What do they call those? Vistas. It already has one of the most beautiful vistas in the city. The view of the palace on top from the ground is just gorgeous. And now let's go into the live play. And welcome to the live play. This is the finished thing, the Royal Palace Museum. Like literally, even the palace itself is fully done for part 2, but I'm not going to be going too much into that because it's still for the part 2. I'm going to be explaining that there, but in this part of the live play is going to be the museum. And also the cinematics are going to be, guys, it's going to be on part 2, so if you guys want to check that out, it's already going to be up on Patreon. The links are going to be down below. But yeah, let's get on to what we've done for the Palace Museum. And from the overview of this thing, we can clearly see the design of it. It's very much inspired by the Louvre. Just imagine if this was closed off and this is where the biggest thing was, and there's a pyramid here. I just placed this down. I was actually downloaded the asset, but the pyramid was a little bit too big, and I don't want to have something that was very iconic to be placed here because it's a little bit, it kind of loses its specialty, if you know what I mean. But yeah, this is the Royal Palace Museum. This used to be part of the palace, which is right there. It used to extend here. This was basically closed off to the public. Everything that was owned by the Royal Palace grounds, everybody who was living there was part of the ruling class. All the leaders of the thing lived here because this country, the alternatives are the Philippines, used to be an absolute monarchy, and they had a ruler, a royal family, and all that kind of stuff. But in the, as history goes on for the series, I'm not going to be going too deep on that this episode. But basically, Magayon ended at the same fate with the United Kingdom. If you're familiar, like, the Queen doesn't hold absolute power over the country. It's split between the Prime Minister, I guess, or most of the power is held by the Prime Minister. And yeah, we have a similar situation to that. And after that, they opened this to the public because the palace, the grounds of the palace, if I can just go way out into space, as you can see, this is the walled city. That is the palace. I'm still planning on expanding the grounds here. It's almost half the size of the entire walled city. Now, they actually held only this part of land, so they decided to move out, and they built this one, and then it expanded, and then they expanded it all the way here, and then they added in a garden at the back, another garden here. I'm planning on adding another garden here. But this was generally closed off to the public. And as the city grew, before the plan was developed, this was a French Revolution type of thing happened. And they were like, why don't you keep it closest to the people? The people didn't like it because everybody who was living here was middle class and the poor people were surrounding it. And the money that was supposed to be used to develop for improving the life of the people here was then focused to just building palace grounds. So, yeah. Maybe. But thankfully, the plan for the city was commissioned for Daniel Burnham, and this was taken into consideration. As you can see, this was built before the plan was. And if the plan was continuous, this road will just continue here, continue straight, and yeah, this would not follow that grid. The grid here, by the way, is the old grid that they used to follow before the city was. It's quite a bit messy because that's just how it is. But just imagine after this, the poor people, foreign settlers stayed here, but local settlers who wanted to move here stayed in these places, mostly here. They can't cross the river because there were no bridges here. The only bridges that were here was this one. This is the only bridge available at the time because they closed off this entire place to the foreign settlement. And if you want to get here, you have to ride a boat to get there. And the bridge here is reversed, is reserved only for the royal family. But yeah, a little bit of history for that. From above, it just looks very plain and simple. It's minimalist. That's like one of the design philosophies of Magayon. It's quite minimalist, but we have some sort of ornamentation to it. It has elements of Thai architecture, as you can see here. These things, I've been studying a bit of Buddhism and their philosophy of enlightenment or escaping suffering. I'm kind of interested in learning more about that, and that's kind of like reflective also of Magayon, because this version of the Philippines escaped tons of the endless cycle of suffering, I guess. Because currently the Philippines, if you're living in the Philippines, it's a literal shit show if you've been following everything that's been going on. But yeah, in light of that, I made this gorgeous thing. These have a roof that is continuous, but these one has an expansion one, just to give it a little bit of a variety. The left wing and the right wing. I'm thinking that the palace was home to the royal family, and these were home to the two branches of the government, legislative and judiciary, I guess, or something. But it was then turned into the museum, the Royal Palace Museum. All the artifacts regarding the royal family and everything in the history before the unification of the entire archipelago, everything is stored here. A lot of artworks, a lot of stuff. It's kind of like the Louvre of Southeast Asia. Very iconic, very iconic. You'll see here we have a lot of statues, and I'm planning on actually, if I had like the proper assets and amount of time to detail this, I would have added tons of statues here, because I'm thinking that this would be similar to those Greek plazas where they have huge statues of the gods and goddesses on their sides. Because in the lore of Magayon, we still have like the Philippine mythology was still being followed. That's like their main religion, even though it follows Buddhism kind of. It's like it's like a weird jumble of things. Nothing here is nothing here is factual. It's all fiction. Oh, a lot of people are going into this. Should probably place a pedestrian lane there. But yeah, just imagine that there's a lot of statues in each dress. But yeah, that's that. We have the fountain at the center. Now, and the view here, you might have seen it before and in the cinematics. The view here is quite gorgeous. The way it's framed to give importance to the to the palace itself is just amazing. Now you'd see how the angled pathways actually make it feel as though it's moving further, and also the design of the fountain is also angled to become smaller at the edge. It just makes it feel like it's farther away, and it makes it look bigger. Yeah, my god, I'm so skilled. Anyways, self-love. Anyways, we also have more horse statues here on the side. Don't mind the barking of the dogs in the background if you can hear that. One here, another one here. This is a Pegasus actually. It's the one that greets you when you're crossing the street. The light poles here, I love the light poles here. Lighting here is still not, I still haven't fixed the light here. I'm gonna be going in the next episode. I'm gonna be going into night mode and showing this place up. But yeah, let's go into first person mode and let's talk about this entire place. Now, when you're in first person mode, the field of view increases, so we can take in much more of what's happening, and it feels like it's bigger. So you can see the space feels larger now. When you're at the ground, this entire space feels larger. It feels like the palace is farther away than it is. I have now placed it on high settings, so excuse the frame rate, but the stills are just gorgeous. Look at that. This university is Chulalongkorn University from Finland. Love this asset, but the tree count here is super high. We have a fountain here, quite gorgeous. A one-way bike path. A one-way road with a bike path that is also one way going across the palace grounds. We have a lot of trees. Now I've decided to change the trees into more canopic ones, the more that give shade, the ones that give more shade, because it would be, since this is the Philippines, it's very hot in the Philippines. And if you've been walking around the city centers or like any urban space in the Philippines, it's super hot, especially if there are no trees. That's why a lot of people like to walk at BGC. People like to go at BGC because BGC has a lot of shade in them as compared to other places in the city. And I also wanted to add trees here because this is 2030, it's super hot. It's gonna be another way to mitigate the heat. Speaking of mitigating the heat, white marble. I'm thinking that this used to be just plain pavement, or maybe the red brick similar to that in the palace. If you can see, it's made of a red brick tile. But yeah, I decided to change to large marble tiles. It's not actually marble because it's expensive, something similar to that vibe, because white reflects the most amount of light and therefore the most amount of heat. And with the trees, they give off shade, give off fresh air, and fountains. Fountains are a great way to cool down a place passively. I mean actively, because passive cooling is passive and active at the same time. Because if you can just leave a pool of water there, it will actually cool the place down. But if you have a fountain, the running water creates a mist, as you can see, and that cools the place down. Look at that. It's quite okay. I have to find a symmetrical angle for it. A lot of gorgeous. It would be amazing. This place is a bit romantic, actually, if you think about it. We have one of the most gorgeous views here at the southern end of the plaza. So let's start from left to right. On the leftmost, we can see the Olympic Village, the bridge in the far end, the building that is curved right there, the Capitol building there, and behind that is the bank that helped fund the planning of the Capitol. But I'm thinking of maybe demolishing that because the significance of the Capitol building is undermined by it to some extent. I'm kind of thinking of removing that so that the Capitol building itself will be the most prominent shape there, other than the obelisk, which is the tallest building in the city. I'm not sure. That's the tallest freestanding structure in the capital city. But once you go outside, height limits are removed. So yeah, we also have Manila City Hall right there. I'm gonna be using that asset because it's just iconic. And we have the temple over there. And the view here of the palace is amazing. Now you wouldn't really choose to be standing here because this will still be quite hot. This is just a walkway. I didn't want to add trees here because you wouldn't be able to see the palace itself. You know, it will be covered in by trees, and the trees that I use here are smaller ones. We have only bushes and all that kind of stuff. Okay, let's take a little stroll through the entire plaza. Now I'm thinking that, I was planning on making like the underground part of it, like the museum, and that this one, it's glass. So let's just imagine that we can see down there because you can't build any higher. So they decided to expand the museum grounds downwards because I think that's how the Louvre is. We have 3 fountains, one on the side. 2 on the sides, one in the center. Let's taking a photo here. Imagine if this is gonna be one of the most Instagrammable places in the country, in the capital city. Just look at that. Who wouldn't want to take a picture here? That statue on top, that is the Freedom statue. It's a statue from France, one of the big statues. I just decided to use that, but I was imagining of having all the gods, the Philippine mythologies on each of the pillars. Something like Greek architecture, as you can see here. Tons of murals and statues all together on the triangular shape there. So yeah, but I don't have assets like that. But I want it to be like Thai, Southeast Asian styled statues because these are very much Romanesque. Roman. The size of the building though, the amount of detail there is just gorgeous. And the way they are curved, the way these are designed, this is just gorgeous. I just keep saying gorgeous, amazing, gorgeous. But yeah, let's go here on the side. I'm going to be facing this direction to the Mayon volcano. This is the road that I was talking about. It's iconic, especially from this part. It is. I'm thinking that these where parades will be held, royal parades, for that matter. And it has a gorgeous view of the Mayon volcano on the left, and on the right we have the palace grounds. I'm going to be further extending this tree line thing to go all the way through. Yes. But for now, this is it. It's very, very, very gorgeous. I love it. If you guys want to check out how I built the palace, that's going to be on the next episode. Now, this angle here is also quite one of a kind. Especially if you're in the palace. I'm just going to give you guys a sneak peek because I'm quite excited. Okay, let's go at the top base. The palace is located on top of a hill. So yes, we have that brick there that I was talking about a while ago. You have to be very mindful of my movements because I want it to be completely symmetrical. Oh, we're a little bit too high. Anyway, so this is the angle. You would see that this is where the royal family would be greeting the people, would be waving like, hey, hello. This is basically what you would see if you were the royal family. You can go here anytime you want because this is open to the public. But yeah, you can see the gorgeous plaza at the bottom. This is where they greet and wave whenever there's a parade at the road right there. And then people can gather here when there are announcements or something. There can also be events here, but this is very much a royal place. The importance of this is higher. You can't hold a concert here or whatever. This is purely for democratic and other reasons. Now at the far end, you might be able to see that those 3 buildings are also aligned to this one. That one there. Those are luxury apartment buildings by the waterfront, because when the city had problems expanding, they decided to just, open up the height restrictions a little bit. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna be redoing that on the later episode. But on the next episode, that's when I will be doing the palace. Now you're seeing a much better view of the palace. You have 2 levels here. The base, 3. You have the base open completely to the public, the 2nd level, and the 3rd level. We have barriers, as you can see there. You can't go to the sides. You can only use the central ones. But yeah, this is the episode. If you guys enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and comment down below what you want to see next or any suggestions, because the algorithm seems to like that. If you guys want to show your support to the channel, consider becoming a patron on patreon.com/Kalihanjo and get exclusive content, early my videos, and so much more. The save game of Magayon will be released on episode 50. Episode 50, the save game of Magayon, will be released to all patrons, but patrons who are at the highest tier will be able to receive the latest save games of the game for each succeeding episodes. But if you can't, that's still okay. You can still click subscribe and hit that bell notification to be notified whenever I upload a brand new video. This is Alejandro signing off. Bye!